So, 2014 was a year in the 21st century, and spring 2014 seems like a decent season for anime, I suppose. Haikyuu, No Game No Life, JoJo Stardust Crusaders adaptation, Tamako Love Story, Pac-Man The Ghostly Adventure. To put it simply, yeah, it was a decent season. We got emotional peaks and slice-of-life brilliance in the form of Tamako's movie, good action in the form of JoJo, and good sports anime in Haikyuu. Seems like the season had good things to offer, all taken into account. So, what are we covering this time around? Something popular from then? Some diamond in the rough? Some A-grade masterpiece? Or some middle-in-the-road sort of work? Well, I am going to be covering something that is most definitely not known of, and not popular from that year in specific. Yes, the anime we'll be covering in this video is not known by most people. In fact, it's probably as obscure as you can get when it comes to an anime that's slice of life with a slight fantastical element as part of its integral plot. And with this anime in specific, from when I last watched it and took everything in it had to offer, I remember not liking it. Like, really not liking it. I mean, my review on AniList is pretty much just a mini rant, and for a big video like this one is meant to be, it's best not to use my AniList review as material for what to talk about, and instead I'm going to write this true review all from scratch, meaning I had to watch this anime. Again. And well, after all this time, have my thoughts really changed? Was I too harsh in this anime? Is it really the worst anime I have ever seen, like I had led myself into believing? Well, the answer to that will come in due time. Hoods Entertainment. You're probably thinking, who? And yeah, to be honest, I don't blame some of you for saying that because I've literally never heard of the studio before, nor have I heard of anything striking that has come from them. So already we're off to a great start. I found out that they have adapted an OVA of the previous version to Horimiya, made by the same mangaka. Mysterious Girlfriend X, which I've been told about by Shay, considering she's already watched it. It already had a weird concept, but who am I to judge? And also, they have produced what appears to be quite a significant bit of the funny H word which rhymes with. So honestly, considering their repertoire already combined with previous knowledge of the series in question, safe to say I went into the deep end for this. So to answer the question, before watching, how was I able to find such an obscure series by some relatively unknown studio in the first place? Honestly, I couldn't tell you. 2017 was a dark period in time for my anime days, just as the 4 years prior to that were as well. If I can remember correctly too, I had just come off of To Love Ru's first season, and this was literally the series before I touched Clannad too. So far out of touch. So enough of the waffling on. If a Flag Breaks, Kanojika Flag, Gaorare, whatever you want to call it. First aired on April 7th, 2014, with the source material being a light novel created by Toka Take, who is behind the story, and Cute G with the original character designs. Hoods Entertainment gave us a 13-episode one-core anime, as well as one full-length OVA episode. This totals to 14 episodes, which I'm going to have to rewatch for the purposes of this video. Again, surely I shouldn't have been that harsh in this anime, right? Surely I'm misremembering. And so, with every story, there's a premise, something that sets the entire series up, and gives it the backbone it needs to progress and develop upon. So, what is the premise of If a Flag Breaks? Well, to begin with chronologically, it starts out with our main protagonist Sota Hatate on a cruise ship, Premium Ambrielle, with a sister who doesn't seem to have any identity revealed to us just now. We then encounter Sota meeting up with a person who calls themselves Sakura, who seems to be willing to talk to Sota and even play a game of chess with him. Sakura seems to have a chess game with very specific pieces, such as the knight, mage, ninja, ninja in chess? After this game though, Sakura gives a power to Sota in hopes that he will make great use of it later on, and is then seen to disappear. And next thing you know, the cruise crashes and Sota has had to deal with the rest of his life being berated by the media and basically set to live a cursed life in his eyes. because naturally, I suppose. Like, surely the media in Japan isn't that toxic to the point where they would do that to the sole survivor of a cruise ship crash. But I guess it's something we can ignore in this case. The media makes him out to be the cause. Sure, let's go with that. We can resume to present day where we come across this shot of a crossing where adults are going to work and this one blonde teenage schoolgirl is going to school. As we overhear this conversation two of the adults are having, all of a sudden a truck is about to jackknife and tumble over onto the civilians at the crossing. But just then, the schoolgirl sees a boy from the same school as her utter something in one of the adults' ears, and miraculously, all the civilians survive. The girl, who we later know as Nanami Knight Bladefield, has her suspicions about what happened on the crossing, still thinking about the guy uttering in the other man's ear. And it comes as a surprise to her when we see the same dude is the new student of the class. It's Sota Hatate. And her suspicions are even heightened whenever someone attempts to befriend him in any sort of way, to which he looks above their heads and gathers a response based upon that in order to shut them down. And okay, for starters, Nanami, I get your reason for being suspicious of Sota, but it really seems that in your mind, just because of some coincidental occurrences at the crossing and in the classroom, you must think something is up with him and from the get-go. Which again, I don't blame you for, but it really boils down to, out of everyone, why do you specifically care so much that you'd have to take Sota up to the roof to interrogate him about it? Like, immediately out of the gate. Like, no normal person just assumes that they're up to something just because of those occurrences. Naturally, it takes time to develop suspicion of someone, and I highly disagree with the phrase, anime doesn't have logic, because that's based on if a character or a series doesn't follow regular logic of the real world, not the medium in its entirety. And based on the theming of this series, I naturally assume it does because of the slice of life setting. But yeah, like I said, Nanami takes Sota to the roof and pretty much interrogates him about what his deal is, which is let off his chest. He has been given the power to see flags above various people's heads. And by judging what type of flag they have, he can either advance it to gain someone's friendship, or whatever he might want from them, or destroy the flag in order to get rid of anyone's feelings based on the flag in question. And Nanami taking this information in just buys it? Okay, so you weren't sure about this guy at first, but now you're immediately going to trust whatever he says about what's going on with him. Again, from the get-go. Nanami defies the logic of the series in such a jarring way. You may think that this is just an anime subverting expectation, but honestly, it's not. It's really just more jarring than anything. But trust me, this is coming from me in the future. This isn't even the beginning of what we have to deal with. Either way, she tries to boast to Sota that she doesn't have a flag above her head because she doesn't have any sort of feeling towards him whatsoever. Okay, cool, whatever. And this leads to a sad, depressing moment from Sota. Okay, anime, slow down. Not only did you have two jarring moments so far, but also a shoehorned, sad, empathetic moment with Sota mentioning him being the only one surviving the ship crash, and him being like, geez, I'll unload my troubles onto you because it's a sad moment, that tries to get you to feel something for our main character but ultimately does nothing? No, seriously, tonally this just feels forced down our throats, like guys, our character is sad, listen to his sad story with music. Now this might come off as something that's ironic coming from me, considering I love Keyworks, and you might think that Maeda's Keyworks do the same thing with their characters, but they really don't. As a fair comparison, take Air's anime adaptation since it has the same episode count. I did like Air quite a bit, but its pacing and its episode length left a lot of room for improvement. I did say that the pacing of the anime did affect the quality of the character arcs greatly, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the build-up and the arcs themselves weren't shoehorned in whatsoever. It still felt somewhat natural despite the pace. Take for example Minagi's arc, one of the better examples to be honest. Despite it only being 2 episodes, it does manage to give us a look into Minagi and Michiru, what Minagi has had to deal with, and the truth behind Michiru, and the path to overcoming this hurdle and overall resolution to the problem. It's only 2 episodes, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't done fairly well. Here though, it's only a moment that lasts a good minute, comes from literally nowhere, and just doesn't get resolved at all. There's no sympathy shared, there's no real connection between audience and character yet, and the only resolution here from Nanami is just stop being all depressed. I really want to give this the benefit of the doubt because there's still 13 more episodes after this, trust me, I do. But the foundation is already starting to become faulty. But yeah, this is basically the start of Sota and Nanami's friendship. If you can even call it that, because she doesn't feel anything apparently. Acquaintances. Yeah, they're acquaintances. After this acquaintance deal, we then get introduced to a new character in Akane Mahaugasawa. I like how we've barely even got to know both Nanami and Sota, and here's a new character just thrown into the mix. Yeah, I get used to that, it tends to do that a lot. So, Akane here. Okay, one thing I'll have to address right away. Aikaino, I do not hate your performances, because you also did Darkness from Konosuba, and despite how I feel about Konosuba, I thought that gig was pretty darn good. And this is in no way your fault. That being said, whoever thought that just because Akane herself already has an overbearing, friendly personality, then that should be coupled with such a high-pitched, obnoxious voice, like as in really high-pitched to the point of absurdity, we need to have a quote-unquote good, long talk. Look, it's one thing to have a character whose entire personality revolves around them being obnoxious and friendly towards individuals and can come off as overbearing, like I already said, but it's a completely different thing to also give them a super high-pitched voice for any and every sentence they speak. Once again, this is not a problem I have on the VA's part, but for a character that can already come across as annoying to some, this is just really overkill. Now I know you might say, oh, that's just the point of a character though, because she's meant to be overbearing. Well, alright, but using that as justification is like saying an overbearing character is meant to be overbearing for both an audience and the characters. When in my eyes, it doesn't always have to be the case. A character could come off as either a bit annoying or a bit overbearing at first, but can also have their own nuance and be well portrayed. They don't have to just stick to one staple of a character. But we're watching something odd, so anything goes, I guess. And speaking of odd... surely I'm not the only one who got uncomfortable with Akane's breathing! But yeah, Sota's power of flags is no use against Akane, so she tags along with Sota and Nanami back to Quest Dorm, which is the place Sota stays at the current moment, and... oh my god. Damn, you live like this? Gosh. We then get a backstory from Akane of her reminiscing of a time where she was able to have a friend who was able to hang out with her before she was escorted away and Akane never saw her again. Growing up in a rich family meant she was never able to interact with others her age much. But the meeting with her friend gave her hope and the encouragement she needed to portray herself in a manner where she's willing to be friendly with others. So, okay, this is what I meant. Simple backstory, we're even getting somewhere with this character. I wonder if she ever gets anything beyond this. Well... if in terms of a relationship between her and Sota, then... kinda? Sota sees a death flag above Akane's head when she states she's going to return to the dorm to collect something she forgot. A death flag is a black flag that can appear above anyone's head, ahead of the time event where they are set to die. The real job for Sota is to destroy as many of these death flags as he possibly can. And so, Sota rushes in to try and save Akane, but it seems like he's too late, as the floor collapses beneath Akane's feet, plummeting her to the floor below. There, with a death flag protruding from her head, Akane is in Sota's arms on the brink of death, and Sota needs to think of something to do quickly. If he can't destroy the death flag, he must replace it with something else in order for it to be overpowered. In this instance, he can see the glimpse of a small romance flag, and he apologizes to Akane and he kisses her in order to restore Akane's health and achieve her conquest flag. She is obviously flustered and has no idea what just happened and why, and shenanigans ensue. So that was the first episode of this. And I know I kind of went on a tangent from what I was meant to be discussing, but I usually use the first episode as reference when talking about the premise presented, so it only made sense to discuss the first episode in its entirety here. Either way, the premise of If a Flag Breaks is summarized as this. Sota obtains a power from a mysterious pink-haired girl known as Sakura. She explains the importance of each pawn's roles on her chessboard, something to keep note for later on. And soon after, the cruise he is on crashes into the sea, and because he is the sole survivor, everyone naturally wants to assume foul play. Sometime later, Sota arrives at this high school and explains to Nanami his power of seeing flags and controlling their will, which is his reason for the odd behavior he displayed at the crossing and in class. It's unknown at this current moment what he's meant to do with this ability, other than either destroy or replace death flags at all costs at this current moment in time. So we can naturally assume that through the progression of this series, Sota will have to eliminate these death flags and maybe meet new characters in which to replace death flags and achieve conquest flags. And yeah, as far as I'm aware, everything checks out, so okay, not the most solid of starts, but we can at least pick up what it's trying to put down here. Now I know that this would be the time that I would talk about the presentation and score for the anime, but to be honest, I don't know if there is anything substantial to be said. It's literally business as usual here. There isn't anything nuanced and nothing amazing to talk about. I will give merit to some character designs. Clearly they were made to look moe and it definitely does play that part, but when you use it for a lot of characters, it can be overdone. The art style is fine, but me and others have noticed that scenes appear very light, characters have way too many shadows, but other than that, really, it's not terrible. Just very unnecessary. Oh, and music is nothing to write home about either. OP is obnoxious to all hell, but not discrediting the vocalist, and ED is okay too. So with that so pleasantly shoved there and now out of the way, it's time to discuss the plot and what that has to offer. And the notes I have on this anime are all over the place really, but I'll do the best I can to compile them together and give you my thoughts on each episode. I'll try to compress my notes for the episodes that don't have much going for it because I don't really want to make this video drag out longer than it actually needs to. Rightio, so at the end of the first episode we come to notice that Sota has a death flag of his own. A swirling death flag that was unlike the one we saw on Akane, which hints to the possibility that he's also in danger from what we already know about death flags. At the start of episode 2 though, I guess we ignore that and come back to the school to witness shenanigans between Sota, Nanami, and Akane once again. Though this time we get a brand new character in the form of Kikuno Shokanji. She used to be a childhood friend and neighbor of Sota's that was always seen as an older sister, so of course, she takes up the mantle of the older sister archetype. Naturally. The four of them then return to Questorm, with Kikuno shocked to see it in tatters. And so with that we go to see the student council president and elder of the school, Mimori Setekoji and Tsumugi Rikushibara. I swear you gotta love these long ass names. With their help, they renovate the Questorm. How you managed to renovate the entirety of the dormitory in one day, I'll never be able to wrap my head around. With renovation done, we get introduced to another character in Megumi Tozokiyama. Now, this character is certainly something, and we'll get to why in a bit. After moving in, it turns out in order to live inside of the dorm, you need at least 5 people there in order for it to be valid. So naturally, everyone with the exception of Mimori and Tsumugi, at this current moment, agrees to move in with Sota. Even Nanami. So, okay, yeah, if it wasn't evident with the sheer amount of characters that are presented to us, If a Flag Breaks is a harem anime. And this episode basically confirmed that it will be a harem anime, and in all honesty, this is where things begin to fall apart at the seams. The problems I personally have with harem anime are how it writes its characters. In most cases, female characters and how they behave towards the male protagonist. But on top of all of this, it also creates this weird representation of relationships between characters, all because the main character comes off as nice. Now, to clarify, being in a relationship isn't always about being nice. But as a result of being a piece of media that can be viewed and experienced, some viewers who don't know any better will actually take this information to heart, which can be really damaging to relationships and even the viewer's mindset. If you had no prior knowledge of what this genre was even about, you wouldn't take a second glance. But it has garnered a vast amount of criticism, and for good reason. It's probably one of the laziest genres, not to mention formulaic, out there, due to lack of actual writing for characters, and it's one of the most destructive genres out there, and the fact that some people actually do take in the information it regurgitates to heart is really concerning. But either way, the fact that If a Flag Breaks is a harem is concerning to me, because typically the harem anime I've seen at least haven't been too good. Already we have been introduced to 7 characters and we barely even know anything special about them, aside from the building blocks of Sota's and character and maybe also Akane's. But it's fine, I suppose. I mean, as long as we get some development in the next 12 episodes. Episode 3, what we got? Oh, a new arrival at Questorm, an android called Ruri Ninjabayashi.
iPhone users out there talking about...
Right, so To remind ourselves, we have a princess from another kingdom, an overbearingly friendly girl whose family is rich, an older sister archetype, an elder who dresses like a baby, a student council president, a guy who also lives at Questorm, and now an android. This isn't going to stop, is it? And this, to me, is one of the weirdest harems I've ever seen. Like, normally in a harem you'd expect there to be some sort of competition between the other characters for the main protag, right? But if a flag breaks, there isn't any competition really. No definitive love interest. I mean, not that it was about that sort of thing. Like, I don't know if I should consider it a subversion of expectations, and if it even is, I don't think it adds or subtracts anything. Because while you would be bothered if there were conflicts, you'd be just as bothered if there weren't. Because if nothing does happen, the series just becomes uninteresting. But ignoring that like this anime tends to do, what's the chaos for this episode? So Mimori, student council president so-and-so, has set up the school's track meet. A sort of day or week of sports, as some of us would see it. But in letting Questorm be a co-ed dorm, obviously some of the faculty have a problem with this, and so it leads to Mimori to make a deal. If Questorm happens to get the title of MVP, they'll all stay in the dorm. But if they don't, Sota will have to leave school and everyone else will have to get kicked out of the dorm. Way to go. But don't worry, everything will be absolutely fine, because Mimori has brought us, go and guess. No, really, guess what this has in store. What? No guesses? Oh, well, here we have another character to introduce. Give it up for Rin Euzaki, everybody. Episode 3 of 14. And already we've been introduced to 9 main characters so far, which wouldn't be too much of an issue, you know, if it wasn't for the fact that this anime only is one core and we barely got to focus on Sota and Akane, 2 characters out of the 9 and counting we have here. We barely know anything about Nanami or Kikuno or Megumu, hell, we just got Rory. At least wait until later to introduce this new character instead of just shoving her in here. So, Rin Euzaki, who are you? Apparently, right off the bat, she hates men. Okay. And she's here to ensure that everyone on the Questorm team is able to be in tip-top shape for the track meet, so that they can all achieve MVP no sweat. Simple enough, I suppose. On one of Sota and Rin's training sessions, Rin gets asked what her ideal sort of guy would be, in where she reminisces about a guy named Soda. It's him, isn't it? Yes, it is, but she doesn't know that for some reason. It would make sense if he didn't know about her, because her appearance was way different back then. So much so that to Sota, she appeared like a boy. But her not knowing? It's literally the same cut and everything. Excuse me everybody, I have to take Rin to the optician. She should have gone to Specsavers. She sends him a text and his phone vibrates, and that's how it's been found out. And that completes a conquest flag, and so now that's another one in the harem pretty much. Now, it was this episode where I started to feel really bored of this anime's antics. It just doesn't do much to say any needs I wanted from this series, like any sort of enjoyment. And I'm giving it the fairest chances because there's still 11 episodes to go. There could be something to enjoy from this, something interesting I may have just passed up on my last watch through. But if I'm getting tired at this point, then what's missing? And speaking of tiring, episode 4. It's track meet time and nothing actually happens. Honestly, the track meet parts were really nothing. I wish I was joking, but no, it's literally just the characters participate in certain events, and there's conversations with Sota, and then there's weird out-of-nowhere situations and shenanigans that just occur for no reason. It's the same insipid stuff we've literally been used to for a good while now, and there's absolutely nothing the series does to break this monotony. The only flag that should be broken at this point is my patience flag. Though the series just realized, oh, we have an underlying big plot midway through the episode where Ruri and Sota then have conversations between one another. So the thing Sota is most upset about, other than the less than preferable performance on the track meet, is the fact that he's dying soon due to the swirling death flag that has hovered over his head. What he fears most though is those around will feel sorrow after his passing, and he doesn't want that to be put on to them, understandably. Although he can remove others' death flags, he can't with his. When suddenly remembering that the roles link with the characters and their last names though, this activates a secret code for Ruri which, by protocol, she follows and insists on Sota proceeding on with his quest. The quest to gather all the pieces he can, the pieces of Sakura's chessboard. She asks Sota if he wants to venture onward to the first gate, which can only be opened by 4 characters and will allow him to venture onward to find the shadows of the world, and remove the death flag eating away at himself, the royal banner. It's elusive, yeah. It's cryptic, definitely. But it adds substance. It's something I wanted this whole time, a tie back to the important underlying plot. I wouldn't mind it if it was left out for an episode or 7 in a much longer series, but with 14 episodes, you kind of don't have a choice. You gotta at least mention it and have it play a much bigger part in your series. He has Ruri place something in his mind, involving him and 4 characters: Nanami, Akane, Ruri, and an unknown character that has the role of Bishop. So Sota's task now is to find this Bishop character in order to advance and learn how to uncover the truth of the world. And Jesus Christ, I never expected Ruri, of all characters, to actually be super important to anything here. Damn, Manpig's appeal for robot girls is justified, and I can see why he digs them.
Hell yeah!
Especially because they can be the best characters in the series at times. Like, no exaggeration, she's probably one of the best characters here. Though, to be fair, anything is better than whatever the rest of the characters are, so I'll take it. Either way, it's back to the track for us. Sota abuses his power, but in the end doesn't win for Questorm. Sota and Nanami came second place, and there was no conditions met to warrant being given MVP, but the faculty decided to congratulate the Questorm in person for their sportsmanship, and their teamwork, which is what they were wanting to see, granted. But apparently their excuse for Questorm being okay was, second place teams can also get MVP. I don't even want to begin to get into how stupid that statement is. Episode 5, it's a dating episode, and my god is this something. So it turns out Akane asks Sota if he would be able to go out with her sometime, like a date with him, to which he agrees. But the harem being the harem, like, oh, that isn't fair if it's just Akane, we should all take turns going out with Sota. To which dates get set up and we see Sota hanging out with Megumu, Akane, Rin, and eventually Kikuno. But the one thing you'll notice about this anime is that it really tries to focus on these moments that have nothing really going for them rather than actual underlying plot at hand, as a way to say, look, these are the characters we have. We don't bother to develop them, but it's the time we spent with them that matters, right? But no, because if these characters at this point were actually focused on sort of like with Akane in episode 1, but with much more depth about who they are, I'd have much more appreciation for them. But here, nothing really happens with that. Even Akane, who I previously mentioned, just refers back to herself having no real friends in her past, and she wants to express her kindness unto others as a result. But that's it, nothing more. To me, that's not development. You can't just pass off one piece of backstory as development for a character. It doesn't work like that. It just makes the character who they are. There's a real significant difference, and I think it's something that If Her Flag Breaks just doesn't understand. Take, whatever you're trying to do, I don't see it. And I think it's time that I talked about Megumu, isn't it? Okay, so, Megumu's deal is that despite appearance, he classifies himself as male and only male. And it's not really made abundantly clear in the anime what he's attracted to. That being said, he has said that he wants to do, in his own words, manly things in order to be seen as a male to the other students. Though he doesn't feel comfortable in using the male toilets and thus has to use the female toilets, which the female students are okay with. Whenever he is misgendered, he tends to get gloomy and upset. Now, this character from a basic level isn't new to anime. There have been quite a significant few like Megumu in anime, but not exactly to a T. What I mean is that an anime's portrayal of a character who does look very feminine and even behave feminine, but is in actuality a male. The term that used to be used for these characters is a bit iffy nowadays, and for good reason honestly, so I won't be using it here. But TLDL, Megumu classifies himself as just a male, right? Now, I don't have a problem with this fact. Actually, that's all well and good. The problem I have with Megumu is how this character is treated within the anime itself. Because you know how whenever someone misgenders Megumu, he gets bummed out? The characters in the anime seem to do this pretty often actually, and almost make it as some sort of running gag or joke. Even Megumu himself doesn't really help, because in episode 5 in specific, he claims to want to do manly things even though we see him and Sota at a claw machine attempting to get a stuffed bear, and going to a cafe to eat parfaits, with him then puckering up to Sota just to get a bit of cream off his face. Also, what he considers manly is perving on girls just taking a bath. Now again, I don't have a problem with Megumu in the fact that he's male but dresses and behaves like a female. That's absolutely fine. The thing I have a problem with is that you make his whole deal about getting misgendered often as a joke. having manly things classify as something you'd expect a heterosexual couple doing, again, as a joke. If you get where I'm coming from, to me, how they treat Megumu in this anime just comes off as really insensitive, and especially so to a certain crowd. While Megumu is not trans because Taki themselves says he's not, you can definitely get why some think so. I don't even say he's gay, to be honest with you. I mean, hell, I've even talked with someone about this and they claim to say that Megumu seemed to be a character with a female mind trapped in a male body. And there are people out there who do believe that this can be plausible. So treating this sort of character as a joke or funny gimmick character, you can see how this would be insensitive and offensive to this crowd. The dates come to a close, and Sota has some time alone with Ruri. Since Sota has the ability to open the first gate, he follows Ruri down to this underground tunnel and opens the door to find a table in the middle of the room. It has the first 4 rolls embedded onto the stone, but there are other rolls that Sota and Ruri can't necessarily decipher, which now opens up Sota's quest much more, since now that he knows the girls' names are connected to the retrospective pieces. This means that now he has to find more girls, and so the harem continues to build. Suddenly, a huge amount of energy and light bursts from outside, drawing Sota out of the cave, where we see this ominous-looking character, almost like an assassin revealed to have the same or similar powers to Sota, almost as if it's building up to a rivalry. It's like, oh my god, actual interesting stuff! Woohoo! Surely we'll see some development to this sort of character. Right? This doesn't get elaborated on yet. We do get a look at the organization she is apparently a part of though. This council is called Organization 30. I mean, the 7 Virtues. The 7 Virtues is spearheaded by a masked woman called Number Zero. Basically, the person she sent out wasn't an assassin, but rather a member of the council who was sent specifically to keep an eye on Sota, to find out if his actions are a problem for the organization or a benefit to them. Okay then. But you think they would introduce this new character to Sota in this next episode, right? Well, while they might introduce her as Mei Daimyo Samurai? No, they wait until the next episode to do that. Why, you may ask? Because beach episode. Nobody interrupts the midpoint beach episode. This isn't inherently a bad thing, but when do you see people praising beach episodes and not for the ecchi content? Oh well, Sota finds out that he is on both lists for both beach and forest trips. And who is responsible for that? Who else? Madame President Mimori. Good lord. Either way, Sota ends up going to the beach first off with Nanami, Megumu, Ruri, and Sumegu. What the actual— I don't care if she's some old lady who's really small and has a childlike smooth skin complexion. You can't tell me that they did not create this just to get away with a small childlike person having big boobs and a school swimsuit. She actually looks way too much like a child to even consider this okay. I'm really not comfortable with that. Anyways, considering Sota has trauma from the Premium Embrielle crash, he can't handle getting close to water or even too far in it if he tries. So then it leads him to a bench not too far from the coastline. There, he gets to meet a new character. You know, just going to ignore the other character you literally were just teasing us with last episode and the start of this one. Okay. Sure, whatever. This girl offers Sota some water and a popsicle in an effort to be kind towards him. This is when he notices a flag that he hasn't seen up until now appear above her head, known as a story flag, meaning that the story will progress with her. The fact that the series even highlights this as story progression is laughable, since we've had nothing but a good 90% nonsense so far. So it's kind of rubbing it in. But no, yeah, excellent. Let's see how the story devolves and laugh our asses off in the process. This girl introduces herself as Kurumiko. You expect me to read the shit cut out with the long names Man Jensen. And the name immediately comes to Sota as Daishiko is supposed to mean bishop, the one role he was looking for. Though when he asks some questions to her, she seems to be a little troubled and heads off elsewhere. Okay, see you later. Anyways, it comes up to the halfway point of the trip. However, because Sota was on both lists, instead of getting moved to the forest, he ended up back at the beach. And now I swear Mimori did it to make him suffer. Oh hey, it's Kurumiko, and she's working like always, and she just blurted out that her parents are dead. Okay, that's sudden. That just doesn't feel natural at all, and it's definitely more clear here this time around. But before we can even process that, Akane— what? Okay, what the fuck? I get Hood's Entertainment is one of those studios, but seriously. And I also get fan service is common in some anime before you get angry at me for reacting this way, but I'm not specifically mad at the fact that it's a fan servicey moment in an anime targeted towards the same demographic as the ages of the characters.
These characters are minors!
I'm mad because they got away with that considering what they're known for. Like, you can't mistake that sea cucumber for something else even if you tried. And if you come at me with the whole, you thought of it though, you're the weird one. Well, no, not really. It was clearly deliberate that it was put there for that purpose. I swear I just get distracted by all these weird moments and have to comment on them. I apologize, but this anime is just so in your face with the weirdness, it just doesn't stop. Either way, Kurumiko gets help because Akane is a kind person after all, and Sota tells Kurumiko that what she's doing is a good job. The story flag progresses, and so they both go into this cave where she expresses that it's where she goes when she has a hard time. Explains that her parents were also victims of the premium embryo, and this fills her with regret for interacting with them. But then the cave is closed off from the entrance by the tide, stranding both Sota and Kurumiko inside of the cave. Sota does his best to eliminate Kurumiko's death flags, but seemingly to no avail, until Sota says that he will become like a big brother to Kurumiko, even with everything she feels like she has done to him, which allows Sota to progress throughout his journey. Ruri eventually finds these two, and all three eventually escape from the cave, safe and sound, and yeah. What is this anime I'm watching? I honestly feel like a fool for even giving this anime another chance because it just doesn't provide much of anything at all except for just bullshit for no reason. And it's hardly ever focusing on the main plot it sets out for itself for Sota to focus on. Yet it's such a tease because that's really the thing that keeps it going for this series. It's what intrigues me to keep on going because we could actually get something good out of it, but then it frustrates me when we get a small snippet of something, and then we just get roped back into the harem-sid shenanigans. Once we feel like we're actually getting somewhere with this story, it's immediately back to the non-essential, nonsensical stuff just for the sake of artificially creating the series' length. Like I had said, I want to like this anime, but everything it's doing just does not work for me and provides more frustration with each passing minute of runtime. While some others may say, well, if it doesn't do what you want it to, then you're not obligated to watch it. Though I feel that people who say that misses the point of what those who actually criticize, like me, actually do when watching media. The whole point of a review isn't just to criticize for the sake of cherry picking bad points to talk on a series. It is to enjoy the series in question. I can't stress that enough, and it's what I feel makes a good review in my opinion. I want to enjoy the anime, and if it's not going to give me a good time, I will talk about what makes it not work. But I'm also trying to give it the fairest chance when it comes to surprising and impressing me. Episode 7, after Kurumiko and, well, the rest of the other characters that have been introduced to us thus far decide to join Queststorm, because why not apparently? The more the merrier, I guess. This episode then has us meet and introduce Mei Daimyo Samurai, for real this time. She had been sent by Number Zero to find out Sota's real motive, which in response he says is to remove his own death flag and fulfill the promise he made to Sakura. This is when Mei transports Sota to another reality. Yeah, it's just another thing she can do. And this is to essentially show Sota the truth behind the world and give him a big head start in his quest. With this showing the girls either not present or dead in the reality she shifts to. I don't even know how Akane even steps inside Queststorm without knowing Sota though. Sota then gets shifted onto the premium Ambrielle in the process of it crashing, meeting Miyuki, the homeroom teacher of Sota's class. Turns out in this reality, Miyuki is the great-granddaughter of Sota, and her surname is Hatate. She is the protagonist of this reality. I have no idea how that works, but whatever, we're in the Matrix, apparently anything can happen. Okay, so out of nowhere, we get this big exposition at the drop of a hat, and we're just left to let that all sink in. The existence of other realities. Also, Mei is now a tsundere, and unlike Nanami, she is literally textbook tsundere, and the show doesn't even try to hide it with the same cliche lines and shit. Come on, spice it up a little at least. This was something Tiger did so much better, if you ask me. Episode 8, Summer Break. Nanami is back in her home country, so where do we go for the second half of the episode, because the first half doesn't even matter? The Principality of Bladefield, of course, where it is a train ride all the way to the capital, and we also meet Nanami's younger sister along the way, Hakuwa Berserker Bladefield. The episode's main event is where there's this modified version of Ruri that chases down Sota, Hakuwa, Nanami, and a chibi Ruri? Due to Sota's quick thinking and utilization of his abilities, he's able to lose the Assassin Ruri model by separating the train carts, thinking that his powers have increased in strength since last time. Episode 9, after arriving in the capital, the King of Bladefield dies. Oh no, character we never met is gone, shocker. But that's not the only thing. As it turns out, eldest son to the crown isn't even an older brother to Nanami and Hakuwa, but rather their dad? Nanami feels angry though. Not about the passing or the sudden news, but rather about the fact that she herself wasn't as sad as she thought she would have been about this sudden news. But Sota is there to tell her that it's okay to feel that way. Just because she didn't feel sad doesn't mean she's emotionless at the end of the day, and wow. Did If Her Flag Breaks just say something good and not meaningless in a serious situation? I'm stunned. It's not grand or anything, but the fact that it happened at all is something, I suppose. Then you realize it took them 9 episodes to do it. Well, aren't you just the disappointment? Sota finally meets face to face with Number Zero. Sota comes across an inscription which tells of a tale of 2 queens and a flag bearer, and the heroes that had defended the kingdom. And this is when Sota comes to the realization that the fairy tale in Sota's perspective is represented almost as a metaphor for his own life. And he fears that he is destined to die with the death flag above his head returning at full force once again. So, thanks to that inscription and Number Zero, he feels as though that everything he has worked towards means nothing in the grand scheme of things. I love when characters piss and moan, it's just the greatest. The series doesn't know if it wants to be a cutesy harem that's mindless and doesn't contribute to anything other than a moe aesthetic and a subjective humor, or an action mystery orientated series that has an interesting elements about it. The anime tries to have its cake and eat it too, but the execution just does not show anything worthwhile. Episode 10, Hakuwa, why are you here? Oh wait, harem, I forgot. And episode 10, like previous episodes, was really boring. I mean, what else can I say at this point? Nothing evolves and every episode just ends up leaving me the same way. Blank face. And don't even get me started on the pageant. My god. There's this wet t-shirt contest, right, at this high school, and why the fuck would you call the water stuff? Like, if you think I was making a big deal out of Akane and the sea cucumber before, there's literally no excuse they can make. They legitimately did this to just try and get away with sexualizing a whole scene with minors. This was deliberate. Like, out of context, those subtitles are gonna raise red flags. Wait a minute, I didn't actually mean to make... Episode 11. This introduces the character of Serika Ginyuin, who is an idol Nanami adores. Sota and Nanami then show Serika around the school festival, to which we hear about Serika's past, in that even though her old school was proud of her for becoming an idol, others weren't seeing her talent, and this gets her depressed. And, who do you think is part of her past and is the reason why she is an idol now? You know, why do I even bother? Purple gay! There's a concert set up for Serika, and this is where something odd happens. Serika's flag produces light from the audience which gets all the more luminous, and gets redirected towards Sota, making him realize that being around people did not give him despair, but rather kindness that could overcome any evil. See? This is why the world should not be so pessimistic, right? But there's a catch. The world seems to freeze in place at this moment of realization, because it turns out that according to Number Zero, Sota's power has become far too great for the world to handle. Wait, what? So, you know the whole multiple realities thing that Mei tried to show Sota from before that never got brought back up because Mei's memory got wiped? Yeah, apparently Sota's basically been inside of a simulated world this entire time, and the one he saw was one of millions that have existed. Sota's real mission was to gather up enough power for his ability and his death flag to take on the being known as the Angelus Gemini, that has control over the virtual worlds and intends to become a god of death in the real world. Again, with the out-of-place immediate info dumps. This is just horrible. They didn't even have a decent conclusion to this circumstance at all. It doesn't have any weight to it. How can you look at this story and say, yeah, this is structurally sound and has no contrivances whatsoever? And you can't even dismiss it because it's supposed to be a mindless harem either. This anime had a plot it was meant to fulfill, but it ended up pushing it back so much to the point where when it reached episode 11, we were only drip-fed information here and there, and then we get this big reveal. Everything is not real and we got bigger shit to do. Sota, get in the fucking Ava. It's flat. All of this just falls flat on its face. Also, when Sota leaves that world because he had to, all the girls' memory got wiped except for Nanami. Because of course. Okay. Right, it's time for the 2 last episodes. Episodes 12 and 13. What's supposed to be the crescendo of the series. Okay, let's get it over with. Essentially, Sota is now in the space between the real world and the virtual world, and he solely has to take on the Angelus Gemini using his power, and it notices that he is outnumbered by them as they seemingly respawn in their thousands. Because of what happened in the virtual world, time goes on without Sota being present and everything feels normal. Aside from Nanami because she knows that Sota was here, but everyone else seems to not know of his existence. Months pass and everyone's moving on, except for Nanami because she knows deep down that Sota still has to be around. She's concerned and confused as she tries to find their answers, eventually ending up in Sota's bedroom, where she finds a note, the letter Sota had. This is where Ruri comes in and kisses Nanami? To then be transported into Ruri's consciousness, which was the housing for... Nanami... What? Okay. So get this. In the real world, Nanami was Sota's real sister, and in an effort to rescue the real Sota, she traveled to this virtual world somehow, but her real world self and virtual world self had split both in personality and appearance, meaning that the Nanami we've seen so far didn't know who she actually was aside from being a princess of some kingdom, and the Nanami from the real world was captured but rescued and stored into Ruri's consciousness. Do you hear how ludicrous this sounds? So now it's just made a bit more complicated than it actually needs to be by introducing a real world Nanami who just appeared in this specific virtual world to give information which logically doesn't even make sense. Take, what were you cooking? No fucks were given with the logic of this series, and it shows. But like that, it's Nanami's job now to gather everyone back to Questorm, into the cave, and now enter the space where Sota is. And oh, although everyone doesn't know who Sota is now, they can trust in Nanami. This is such a riveting moment. Everyone has faith. Everyone believes in Sota. Yeah, bullshit. Hang on a second, the teacher's here. What has she contributed? And wait, I thought everyone was supposed to be linked to a chess piece to play here. What's the teacher's last name? Mackenzie. Fucking Mackenzie. So if a flag breaks doesn't even follow its own set rule apparently. You literally had one job. Follow your own rules and you can't even do that. So even with the combined powers of everyone, it's not enough to face off against Sota's true trauma, the premium Ambrielle, which is apparently the final boss. Seriously. The cast all get transported onto the vessel, which leads to Sota saving a man who was trapped underneath some of the cruiser's wreckage, but then manages to get stuck himself. So the man goes to get help. One of the Sacrament girls feeds information into his head and in some way can be in reference to all the doubt that he has had throughout the series. She tells him that he's not going to come back, and Sota denies it, knowing someone like that wouldn't give up on him so easily, and that he has assistance, which Demon obviously winds Sota up about, saying the opposite to try to get him to doubt himself. But then the guy comes back with the rest of the harem pretty much. Okay, so we're nearing the end of the series. It's the last episode of this journey. We've been through a hell of a lot, so you'd think now would be a good time to share a message, which everyone can somewhat relate to. While the anime may have definitely been one that I did not like throughout and one I got frustrated with on multiple occasions, there's got to be at least something that ties this all up in a neat bow. It may not be a good series, but can it at least end off somewhat on a positive note? The ending message of If a Flag Breaks revolves around the death flag that Sota has been bearing this entire time. Sota's death flag, from what I understand, works like this. So, say Sota removes a death flag, that death flag then becomes part of his ability, therefore strengthening him in his battle state, therefore increasing the weight of his flag, the weight of his burden. Whenever he stops someone else's death flag, it becomes a part of his own, meaning that he basically is carrying the burden of death and despair. But he's okay with carrying the burden of the death flag, because even though he carries everyone's burdens, he still thinks the world is beautiful. So to sum up, the message is this. Even if you are the one who carries the burdens of everyone else on your shoulders, you can relax knowing the world is a good place. I'm speechless. This message is just so stupid, so harmful. Realistically speaking, it just feels like it's trying to convey to our audience that they should rather carry everyone's burden upon their shoulders, beating themselves up rather than allowing themselves to be surrounded by supportive and encouraging people. What? Because Sota is the main character who should be doing this sort of thing? Is he a role model? Is this laughing stock of a main character so influential to people that he should spread his fucking lunacy among the masses in an attempt to coerce people into thinking that carrying everyone's burdens is a good thing? What's good about that? What's good about any of this? I can't with the series. I tried to like it, but somehow it ended up being worse than I could have ever possibly fucking imagined. Why does anyone like this load of toxic fucking trash? Okay, I think I might end it there for covering the plot of this anime. I'm way too heated for this shit, and I don't care enough for the end of episode 13 of the OVA to even say anything about them. But as a small note, I think me and Shay can say this about the OVA. So you know, Christmas stuff, the usual, getting crushed by thighs and sharing a romantic moment with someone you just found out is your sister. Good time shared by all, happy Crimbo. Seriously, I don't care enough that Sota pulls through in the end. I don't care that Number Zero was actually one of the old queens of Bladefield. I don't care about the characters being all okay. I don't care about it ending all happy and joyous as can be. Trust me, watching this anime again made me mad. And I rarely get mad at media, if at all. So, to clarify, if I hadn't made it all too clear already, let me try to explain to you all one final time why I got so mad at this anime. And I'll try to do it as clearly as I can so you can all understand. Slice of life anime is intended to bring us stories that can give us power if it so chooses to, with the implementation of well-developed characterization, story writing, and theming that can provide us with ethereal experiences. And some of my favourite anime series at this point have predominantly been slice of life. Little Buster's Refrain, Clannad After Story, A Silent Voice, Tamako Love Story. These anime are my favourites because of how well it handles these things. If a Flag Breaks is a slice of life anime that tries to portray two different sides of itself. One side being the mindless turn your brain off harem shenanigans, and the other being this mysterious plot about the world, flags, and secrets that revolve around the 7 virtues, Number Zero, the sacraments, which are the names for Sakura and Demon, and they go into this expecting you to piece everything together while also bearing witness to random, inconsequential, and pointless events which honestly hold no weight to them. Literally none. And when one side of the anime, which by the way takes up the majority of the runtime, happens to come off as annoying, tedious to get through, and makes you wish you want to watch something with actual writing and effort put into it, you then become increasingly dependent on the actual plot of the anime to give you some sustenance. But even then, these occurrences are rare, only happening for a few minutes each episode at least, with the exception of maybe episode 3. Like I said, you are drip-fed this information throughout the episodes, but in 3 instances, episodes 7, 9, and anything from 11 and beyond, you are then bombarded with a large amount of new information, whether it be learning about other realities, or the analogousness of Sota's situation to lore, or realizing the world you're in isn't even real and you're destined to fight to protect the real world. It's just so inconsistent with how it wants to handle this plot that even this ultimately fails as well. So you're left with harem nonsense that's just dead on arrival and provides nothing other than to give the series its length, and a failure to provide any sort of information to what is actually important, to what is going on with that plot. Which, by the way, if you hadn't noticed, is supposed to be the main thing about this series, yet shows up less than all the random nonsensical fluff from the harem. And so if a Flag Breaks just ends up not having anything to support itself plot-wise, and that's point number 1. A failure to deliver any decent plot. Point 2 is lack of characterization. And if a Flag Breaks has characters, just like Nintendo Switch has games. With this anime, they definitely went the quantity over quality route. So many of these characters just provide absolutely nothing at all to this story. It's insane. You know, except for when it does, but again, like I had said before, backstories do not equal character progression. Like, take for example Akane's backstory from the first episode, with her not having many friends to begin with. But the friend that she did have was an inspiration in that she wanted to become friendly and kind-hearted towards others. And while that sounds great, it doesn't count really as progression. It's episode 1 and we didn't know anything about her yet. The backstory made the character. It didn't progress her in any way, shape or form. And every single character can be summed up this way too. Either having backstories that make the character who they are, or provide nothing to the table other than being someone that adds a quirky thing to the harem, and nothing more is added. Yeah, the series just does not even care about the characters and their writing, and this is the major reason as for why this series suffers, because I need to repeat myself. Characters are the reason a slice of life can thrive. If there's nothing to the characterization, what's the point? Which leads me to point 3. While this anime may not have a theme, the message it attempts to portray really just buries it. It had me like, what was the point of all we've just been through then? Only to be told basically to harm yourself. Again, the mark of a good story is one which the message is strong and you can resonate with and gather a true understanding of what the true intentions of the story were. And this can be made to reflect upon things about yourself. Or if you're Tamako, you can have a follow-up story that's cute and basically gives us the final hurrah, conveyed in such a sweet way. With If a Flag Breaks, when I heard that line, I felt nothing but hatred in myself, hence why I reacted like I did. It's like a huge tease. You'd been giving me something that I have been annoyed with, to endlessly frustrated with because of the lack of information or overabundance of info given all at once just whenever it feels like, to mad because of how the execution of this plot was alongside every single issue I had with the harem side of things, to beyond mad with a message that makes no sense and should not be followed by anyone at all. The series gave me a hook, but broke it then and there. But I was too far invested into the series at that point, so I had to suffer one core of pathetic, lousy writing. Blank or insensitive characters, blank, weird, or downright unfunny situations created for the sake of artificial length and padding, zero impact with emotional scenes, zero emotional value for any of the characters because nothing was given, and to end it all, a harmful message. This just speaks to how unimaginably low you can go with a series. I'm convinced that nothing can beat this in how astronomically horrible this was executed. So, what is the thing we can take away here? Well, for starters, it's my opinion, and I can't stress it enough whenever I make these video reviews. But it was all done from the perspectives of me and Shay, who watched this series in March and April. And whenever I state how can someone even like this, it's mainly out of frustration because, you know, despite everything, it's definitely possible and understandable why someone might like If a Flag Breaks. Everything has a following for a reason. Might just want to watch it for like the cute, mindless harem stuff and the moe factor, and that it seems cutesy with all of these shenanigans involved. So if you just so happen to like If a Flag Breaks, good on you. I won't ever like this series at all, but it's good to know that someone out there appreciates it for what it is, and finds solace in knowing that even though I dislike the series beyond belief, I know that I'm not in any right to shut down your opinion on the series. Whatever I say should not affect your opinions either, because it's just what me and Shay think, not what you personally think. Though, should I recommend this series to you? Honestly, no, but I'm not stopping you outright from doing so. You are your own person after all. This review was mainly just made to illustrate how I might address a bad series to me personally, in a critical light, and obviously this can be your place to judge based upon how I looked at things here. In any case, the series If a Flag Breaks, to me, left me with a bad taste in my mouth, and I personally believe that out of every anime series that I have watched so far, this is the worst series that I have ever experienced, with me giving it the rating of 1. To me, it didn't even give me any sort of merit aside from a cool power concept, I guess. But even then in execution, it was confusing. But with this, no fucks were given at all, and this is the end product we got. And it's a shame too, because it could have been great. I saw the potential, but it all went down the drain and disposed of itself in the end. I suppose the real merit here is that with this series, I managed to find a real appreciation for other series out there, as well as the medium as a whole. Ones with brilliant storytelling. Ones with action and power seeping from the screen and high energy all throughout. Anime is one of those mediums which can portray whatever it wants to an audience. And as we all know, media is subjective. Some may love what a series does, but some might not despite of what the series itself tends to do, whether it be for grandeur or nuance. The wide range it encompasses is part of the reason why we as a community can collectively come together and share our opinions. It shows our range, it shows uniqueness. And I think, to be honest, that's the beauty of it all.